Hello. Oh, waiting for Iane to join. Hello.
Hey,
What's going on?
not much. I think this is the only game left that I played on your list.
I mean, I want to keep hammering this point home. I don't think it's strictly necessary that you have played the game in order to join me in this completely arbitrary ranking. That's just an excuse for me to speak at length into a mic about games. Um, but yeah, Echoes of the Eye for Outer Wilds. I'm assuming you played Outer Wilds a while before this came out.
Yes, so I just did the Echoes by itself,
Oh, also hang
pretty
on
much.
because I'm losing some frames on my stream. Are you still seeing the stream or is it dying
Yeah, I
off?
still see it.
Oh, okay. Um, that's fine then. It looks like it's recovered. So I think I want to go ahead and just like say spoilers are open season because I don't think anyone here is like, oh no, I'm still waiting to play through Outer Wilds. At least I hope not, because if you are, you should probably just close. And yes, I'm speaking to the 6 people watching.
Yeah, we should probably just talk about spoilers.
So we're specifically talking about the DLC here, and one of the things that I thought was great about Outer Wilds was that it did have some loose ends, but that it felt like those loose ends were logical and kind of left things open for you to think about afterwards.
Like, what loose ends do you mean?
Like the arrival of the comet. What is it called? The Nomad, or
Oh, the Interloper?
yeah, the Interloper. Like the arrival of the Interloper and the ghost matter that wipes out the Nomai. The the reason why the eye is kind of so slippery and that they can't really pin it down, and it doesn't seem to entirely tie into the quantum entanglement stuff. It seems to be more than that. Uh,
Yeah.
and you know, I thought it was good in a way that it had so much openness, um, especially since you know the game is pretty narratively focused in a weird way. But Echoes of the Eye obviously comes in and fills in a lot of gaps. And I wound up being really happy with the way that it handled all of that. What did you think of that?
Um, I wasn't really thinking much of loose ends. I really liked the way it was structurally set up, where it was kind of one planet but with different zones and then had different dream zones, so you could explore back and forth between them.
Right. So it's a lot more compressed than the regular base game. You're not traveling
It's
as much.
compressed, yeah, but it's still kind of, I don't know, that you can explore in different areas.
Yeah, it definitely feels a lot more. Um, I don't know. It's a little isolated from the rest of the solar system, but I think in a meaningful way. Is the stream
And
not?
it's definitely cool that it could have been there all along and you just wouldn't know to look for it.
Yeah, yeah. Hang on a second. I might restart or reboot the stream real quick to see if
Okay.
I can fix. Okay, I think it should be back up now. So, what were you saying about it all being in one spot?
Oh, just I don't know, the having it be in one planet was good, so you didn't need to traipse across the whole universe again, and then having that one planet have a lot of divisions meant you could move to different places once you got stuck in a puzzle. Like I got
Yeah,
stuck on the stealth sections pretty hard, but being able to tab out of that and like try to explore the exterior or a different section.
right. Yeah, what did you think of the new species?
They were not what I expected at all. I was disappointed we never got to read their text.
I was actually pleasantly surprised we didn't get to read their text because when you first encounter it and you pull out your translator and you look at it and it says, unknown language or whatever, I was like, oh no, we're gonna find some decoder or something, and then it'll be very similar. It'll be like a rehash of you finding the Nomai text. And while I thought that was really cool in the base game, I was like, oh, this is going to be a rehash. So then when I realized that everything was more told to you through slideshows, like slide reels, I was
Yeah.
I was a little happy. And then when I got to the end and realized, oh, you never get the translator to understand their language, that's not important for you to be able to understand their motivations or their
Yeah,
yeah
their culture, as it were.
yeah um I thought that was a good surprise, at least for me.
I take that. When
uh,
you got to the end, did you realize it was the end, or did you think you had like more to do and save
no
the
no
station or something?
when I got to the end of when you talk to the what is he called, the prisoner,
The prisoner, yeah.
when you encounter the prisoner and trade, your thoughts with his, and then he goes off. I was like, okay, so this is the end of this line, but there's got to be some other thing to do. And I didn't think it
Exactly.
was saving the station, but I figured it had something to do with the eye. And unfortunately, I had completely deleted all of my progress as far as the
Oh
base
no.
game. And the reason I did that was because I got a VR headset and I downloaded the VR mod for Outer Wilds.
How was
And
that?
it's okay. it's not great. I would not recommend it for your first experience of the Outer Wilds. And it's just kind of neat to revisit certain things in VR, but it's a little
Mhm.
clumsy. It doesn't quite translate well.
That makes sense. And you're already playing something pretty fiddly with the space movement.
Yeah, yeah. So, I lost all of my progress, so I wound up realizing like if he shows up like what's the Nomai's name? Selenium.
Oh, Solanum?
Solanum. If he shows up like Solanum, um, then that's because I encountered him and finished basically his quest line. But if I go to the eye now, it's just going to be him. So I wound up having to go all over Hell's Half Acre and find everybody and, check all those boxes. So it was like a good 2 hours of extra playing of stuff that I'd already done and just kind of
Yeah.
refreshing my memory on before I got to the end of the DLC. And even then, I was still really happy with what they did.
Yeah.
Um,
How did you feel about the stealth sections everyone hates?
at first, I was a little thrown off by them, and then it didn't take me too long for it to click that it wasn't actually uh, like a intentional stealth section, like a left turn for the gameplay. It's actually
Hmm.
like an obstacle that you solve a puzzle to get around.
Yeah, you can exploit past both of the places you need to turn the lights off through intentional ways, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, and you it it's what a lot of the game is about, is recontextualization of environmental things that are always there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and with the recontextualization, especially seeing the like green mode. I don't know what to call it, but where you could actually see in the dark and see where they all were.
The debug, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Surgery says there's the option to turn reduce scares that makes it extremely easy. I guess it just I never turned it on, but after reading some things later on, I guess it just makes them slower to catch you, so you can just like run past them.
And they'll be like peeking out at you less, and they won't like approach you with their light off and try to sneak up.
Yeah, that genuinely jump scared me a couple times. I'm not particularly weak to jump scares, but it did get me a couple times.
The prisoner got me really good when he reaches out and then nothing actually happens.
Nah, I figured he would do. I figured that would be a fake out. I was ready for that one. What I was not ready for was him handing over the dream scepter or whatever.
Yeah.
That was a really really powerful moment. That genuinely. I think that might be the high point of the entire game to me.
I can dig that.
The reason why is because so much of the game is you picking apart every other character's story, and that's the first time where it feels like the player has their own story that they're telling. And
Yeah.
I think it's conveyed really, really well in that it's conveyed back to someone who you don't share a language with in their own way of sharing information.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which, if people don't know what I'm talking about, basically, oh wait, Sugary sings. I like the sequence of figuring things out. I need the codes to open this vault, but the codes aren't around. And then
That was
yeah, they
it
just
was a good
deleted
fake
the
out, but it
codes.
was a little frustrating too that there
Wh-
never actually was a payoff for that.
Well, that's not true because the payoff was they censored it. That I think that's actually really important is that the big payoff for a lot of these threads in the expansion is that that the species is outright destroying information about their past, and that's something that is so different from the Nomai
Oh,
and the path that you follow in the regular game, where you're following up on this paper trail of people who were open and sharing with each other and trying to work together to a shared goal, and then you're encountering a total mirror image of that where I don't know what to call them, the owl people.
they have a name, I'm sure, but yeah,
Uh, well,
ear owls.
yeah, if they have a name, I don't think we ever learn it. But the owl people from The Stranger, uh, where
Strangers.
they take yeah strangers I guess where they take this dark turn at some point in their past and they start covering up things about their own past. I think that was really effective, and I think tying it into your gameplay goal of like finding these codes in order to unlock progress and realizing that no, they just destroyed it. That's redacted. Your ability to progress has overlapped with them destroying documents. I think that's really I think that's really interesting and really effective. And I think it goes over a lot of people's heads.
Yeah, I didn't think about it. That's a good, cool angle on it.
Well, I didn't mean to throw shade. I think it goes over a lot of idiots' heads, like Ayane. By the way, is Ayane how this should be pronounced?
Sure, it's just kind of a throwaway name I use, so I'm not too worried.
Okay, Throwaway
Yes.
is your new name. The contrast is Nomai want their information to be found, the strangers never want it found. But that's not entirely true either. The strangers do want to keep some information around, but it's only information that is flattering to their current culture. And I
Well,
think,
not their current culture. They're trying to recapture their past and their homeland too.
yeah, yeah, and there's the whole thing where, you see them actively censoring information, and they're also preserving it. They're archiving it at the same time. They're digitizing it into their hologram reality or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, they specifically think they're protecting the universe by hiding the eye of the universe. That also, I think, is an important point. Um, where that's, I think, open to interpretation, but I do think it's intended to be taken that way, that they think that they're doing the right thing the whole
And
time.
if that's the case, I never understood why we're supposed to think the prisoner is a good guy. It seems like he just kind of did something impulsive and reckless and dangerous for the Nomai.
But again, we can't know the prisoner well enough to know that he was being reckless. All we see is the actual actions.
Hmm.
And that's one thing that's interesting about the way that the strangers record everything, is that they're recording either slideshows of actual physical events, or they are recording their thoughts directly, their thoughts and experiences directly. If you notice, it's all either slideshows that are animated, or that are depicting events, or it's perspectives from out of their directly out of their eyes, like their
Hmm.
eyes are
Yeah.
their actual cameras. um and so I think that's one of the differences between them and the Nomai, who communicate linguistically, is that the Nomai, because they communicate with words and language, they're expressing themselves and conveying their own intent, whereas the strangers are kind of closed off even to each other, I think.
The strangers do have a language for each other, though. We just never learn it.
I guess so. Well, they don't use it much.
Yeah, that's true. Just very basic, like landmarks and signposts.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting that they even included some of the language, even though it's never decoded.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have minded
I think you're
seeing
right, though. That part of
part of what?
Oh, no, just that part of the fun is not having it decoded.
Yeah. 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 As far as the motivation for the what's his name, the prisoner, is, I think it's almost fine that there's not a stated motivation for it, because it would have been easy for him to like also include like an image of him thinking somebody out there was going to receive the signal, or that the signal had some sort of deeper meaning or anything like that. um but I think, just like I was saying, that the open-endedness of the original game and some of the like kind of dead ends,
Hmm.
or loose ends, kind of let players later on think about and expand on, how they feel about different parts of the game. I think that's a big a great fertile ground for people to kind of layer their own impressions of a lot of the themes of the game, like the eye of the universe itself, the idea of, death and rebirth, and losing, uh, everything, all of the structure that
Yeah.
and allowing something else to take its place. And that it's a really clever inversion to have uh, the strangers be the focus of the DLC in this much smaller, more confined area, um, but a little bit more dense. And then you have the Nomai completely strewn across the entire rest of the solar system, and apparently the rest of the galaxies, all, kind of like, picking things apart and making things to last. Um,
And also, the Nomai were building these great works and cities and stuff, and the strangers had a cloaked spaceship that they never really left.
right.
Just kind of Again, the exploration verse keeping to themselves.
Yeah, and it's also interesting thinking about, did they always have the ability to cloak this thing? Because I think
Hmm.
it's shown in a in one of the flashbacks or slide reels or something, them arriving and immediately cloaking, which I'd
Mm-hmm.
never really understood how that fit into anything, or if it was just part of their nature to sort of be a little nocturnal and sort of like move unseen if possible.
Makes sense from their dark planet.
But the planet's not always dark. In fact, in a lot of the flashbacks and slide reels, we see the sun out. The sun's out constantly in the actual real world ship, or their fake sun.
Yeah.
So I don't really
Huh.
understand that. I always assumed that it was just a day night cycle that we never got to see the culmination of because we're trapped in a 22-minute or 23-minute time loop.
That makes sense.
Uh,
It
I,
is kind of funny that this these like shrines last till the end of the universe, and then in 22 minutes we show up and two of them explode.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's due to the
Yeah, the dam
dam
breaking
the dam
from the ship
breaking.
powering on.
Yeah, yeah. That I think was one of those things that I did feel was a loose end that I wanted concluded, and I was happy with what I got from it
Hmm.
after I quote unquote beat the DLC. I did go back and pick through some of the details on that a little bit more, and that was an interesting that they bothered to think about it as much as they did.
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw this out here, and this is not a personal attack, but every time you say "yeah" like that, where you kind of raise it up, it kind of sounds a little sarcastic. You're like,
Well, I don't mean to
"Yeah,
be.
yeah, sure, sure,
I am sincerely agreeing.
okay, that's nice." Um, yeah, I really enjoyed this. Do you think they're going to do anything more? Maybe not even directly connected to this, but these developers, do you think they'll do something similar to this, or do you want to see them t- take a step in another direction?
I feel like they've mined out most of their really good ideas in this space, so I think I'd want to see what else they can come up with.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think Outer Wilds is probably one of my uh, all time games that I recommend everyone play once and as unspoiled as you can go into it.
Hmm.
But it's not particularly replayable. Like I said, I did replay a huge amount of the base game, uh, and it was not a thrill ride. It was not miserable by any means. Big Turd wants to know what we thought of Outer Wilds proper. Um, it almost made my game of the year last year, but was
It was definitely one of my favorites too.
yeah, but it was just barely edged out by Helen's Mysterious Castle, which I don't think you played that.
Mm-mm. Sounds
It's
like a 2D Metroidvania.
It well, no, it's an RPG Maker game that has a really interesting combat mechanic. It's you play as a single member of a party, and
Hmm.
there's like a whole. It's like an active turn-based thing where every action that you take, instead of actions, you have a set of equipment that's like eight pieces of equipment, and you pick which item to use for your turn, and each item takes a number of turns, basically. So, like,
Huh.
using a sword will take 8 turns, and it will give you this much attack, and at the end of those turns, and while those turns are going by, you will be able to fend off this much damage from enemy attacks. And so it's got this really interesting balancing mechanism that I haven't seen in any other RPG like that. And then on top of it, it's really charming and has really good writing and fun exploration, because a lot of the rewards that you get for exploration are like new equipment pieces that you can trade into your setup.
Neat.
So I highly recommend it. It's also only like $2, so it's a strong recommendation from that front. As far as Outer Wilds, the base game goes, yeah, it's one of those puzzle games that is worth playing, absolutely.
The only other game I found like it is Toki Tori 2, and just this idea that you have all these tools, but you need to kind of learn them one by one rather than getting actual upgrades.
No, this fucking game again, huh? I Toki Tori 2, I played. I know I played it, and I don't remember it very well. And I keep hearing it brought up, and people get really frustrated with me that I don't remember it and that I don't agree with them that it's like one of the best games of all time. I'm sorry, I just do not remember it. Big Turd played it. Do you remember it, Big Turd? Because I don't. I remember you play as a fat round bird, and that's about it.
You do.
Yeah. I'll replay it at some point. I'll eventually get browbeat into, playing it and, admitting, breaking down like Picard in that episode and saying Toki Tori 2 is not the greatest game of all time. And they'll just keep beating on me. But yeah, I haven't really experienced anything quite like Outer Wilds. That's one of the reasons why Forgotten City really stuck in my craw, was because it was advertised to me as being very similar to Outer Wilds.
That's the time loop thing?
That is the Oblivion mod, originally an Oblivion mod that has a time loop where you go back to a cursed city in Imperial Rome.
If anyone commits a sin, they all die.
It is miserable. It is so badly
Oh no,
done
it seems
and
so cool.
amateurish. I hated it. I hated it. It's like watching a high school stage production where even if the kids are doing a really good job, you're still rolling your eyes the entire time. It does not capitalize on the time loop mechanic. Everyone comparing it to Outer Wilds in any fashion is a nincompoop who just sees time loop and goes, "Oh, these are the same game. If you like this, you'll love this." No, don't get your hopes up. I won't say don't get it, because you might like it better than I did. You might click with the writing or something. I really did not enjoy it, and I was very frustrated with the comparison to Outer Wilds. One thing I will say is very similar, not in any real way, but in a very abstract way. Since we talked about recontextualization, is Superland, which is a German open world puzzle game. Have you heard about this?
No, I'm looking it up right now.
So it's basically it's a little bit similar at the very beginning to like DLC Quest, where you run around and you collect coins to buy upgrades, and you're kind of constricted in this small area, but then it keeps building up and getting more and more open. And what it does that's really interesting is a lot of your upgrades later on are not just Metroidvania style upgrades where you like get a double jump and oh now you can get to those higher ledges that you've been seeing, or you get a rocket launcher and now you can break those blocks that you've been seeing everywhere. But more mundane things like objects made out of metal, suddenly you recontextualize those when you get an upgrade and you go, oh, that's not just like some background thing. That is my route to go from here to here. This is a connective platform. This is some sort of connective tissue with this other part of the game. And the reason why I like Outer Wilds so much better than that, even though I appreciate that, is that Outer Wilds does that without any mechanical changes occurring.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think that's important, an important distinction, and I think it's extremely courageous from the point of view of being a developer of a video game and to not have mechanical progress that the players can like point to on the screen and say like I unlocked the ability to do this, because you don't unlock abilities in Outer Wilds. You learn more about the universe.
Speaking of the devs being courageous, a thing that annoyed me, and there were a couple instances in the DLC, was when you'd be trying to look at a puzzle and then it has a pop-up saying, oh no, you should just shoot your probe through this hole.
Good point. Yeah. I do think that's probably a victim of playtesting, where
Sounds right.
a game like this, I forgot sometimes that you had a scout launcher or a signal scope. And that, I think, gets aggravated in the DLC when you're not constantly using it. So I can see them needing to remind people, but it is a little obtrusive, I'll agree. There are a couple things like that. Like, for example, your ship log. I mentioned this when I was talking about Deathloop. But the ship log pop-ups are a little backseaty. You know, you'll take a look at something and not even have a chance to comprehend it. And this game does a little bit better job at giving you like a pause for breath before popping it up. But like in Deathloop, it immediately throws up on the screen. All right, coordinating your GPS for the new destination. You're like, what happened? I haven't even read this note yet. So yeah, that is a problem, but I think you have to have that problem now, unfortunately. I don't think you can just
Makes
ride.
sense.
I don't think you can just ride on players having enough spoons to bring out a notebook and write anything down. I think that died.
Maybe a toggle
I
you
think.
can opt out of.
Yeah, I would hope so, but I mean that's another layer. That's adding accessibility. That's adding inverse accessibility, which is, we're just barely battering down the gates of developers to get them to add simple accessibility functions. Getting them to add inverse accessibility is going to be another tall order, I think.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I would like that. Same with being able to remove the UI. I mean, I went out of my way. I spent like 10 minutes at some point in my life just setting up this little clip that I've got in a loop here of just watching the solar system go by, and I couldn't remove the UI. And maybe there's some way that I wasn't able to do it, other than just flying so far out that you couldn't see the pop-ups, but it would still have the stuff in the upper corners. Yeah. All I wanted to do was set up a little cinematic thing here with the nice subtle music in the background, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it because of the UI, but I did it anyway.
Did I have it calm for 10 minutes and then you fall into the sun?
Well, you can actually see me back off. I have to back off because the gravity's constantly pulling you back down. So I eventually apply reverse thrusters and ruin the whole scene, and then you see Giant Steep sort of slide into frame, and then it loops over again. Because then I think I reached the back end of the solar system, and it pulled me back in automatically and came up with a big pop up like, oh, you're going too far.
Autopilot.
Yeah, autopilot engaged. So, yeah, that's what is this? Oh, Echoes of the Eye, DLC for Outer Wilds. Let's look at the ranking for this. Because this is going to be tough since this is just a, did I forget to put something here? That Big Turd was talking to me about? Record of Lodos, Yakuza, Tony Hawk. 12 is just empty. It's calling to me, but I don't know why. So, I don't know how many of these games you're familiar with or at all. And the fact that we are just talking about the DLC, I want to make that clear.
Yeah, that brings it down for sure.
I played the main game last year. I wrote about it. I made a whole post about how it was almost my game of the year last year. I think that did it justice. But as far as the DLC goes, it's good, but I don't know if it's as good as the game itself.
It's hard to be with how complex the game itself is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's better than Ender Lilies. I like at least 12. I'd probably put it over Mega Man.
Mega Man 4 or 2?
Mega Man 2. I don't know. Yakuza seems like a pretty powerful game. I don't know if just this DLC is better than that.
Yakuza 7 is genuinely a pretty emotionally charged game. If you get invested in it and play all the way through it, I think the original game of Outer Wilds is probably even more so if you get invested into it. The DLC, although the end, the encounter with the prisoner, I think, is probably the absolute high point of the game itself and the DLC, obviously. The rest of it is more interesting in contrast with the game itself. Like I was saying, all of my thoughts about, the interplay between the way the Nomai are presented and the way the strangers are presented. I think it hangs a lot on the structure of the game itself, which isn't a bad thing, but it doesn't set out on its own, which it's a DLC. I mean, unfortunately, I think you can't have a DLC that is so good that it completely changes the core game in a way that it makes the DLC like as good as the game that it's changing. But it is pretty good. So, Yakuza structurally is just a JRPG. But it does have really great acting. And I think you're right about putting it above Mega Man 2, for sure. Because Mega Man 2 is just a little too rough. It's a classic game, it's got some of the best music ever, but playing back through it can be pretty frustrating, and playing through it for your first time is probably a nightmare. I'm happy with putting it here under Yakuza. I think that does it enough credit for being just a DLC.
Good job, Echoes of the Eye.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Are there any other games here um, you have any input on? I know you haven't played the Forgotten City yet, but I could spend another hour bitching about that. Uh,
I'm downloading Dark Souls 3 for Convergence right now, so maybe I'll tag back in tomorrow.
oh, the Convergence mod, huh? Are you
Yeah, I really like the Dark Souls 1 Nightfall or whatever it was called.
Age of Sunlight?
Yeah, that's the one.
You
These restructuring mobs.
did you play through that one?
Yeah.
Um, what did you think? Because when I played through it, I thought, uh, this is probably how I'm going to do the rest of my playthroughs of Dark Souls. Because it's
I don't know
different.
that I'll go to it continually, but yeah, that it was different and that it felt like the first run again was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I've not played any good Dark Souls 1 mods up to that point. So I was a little gun shy on it, honestly, because a lot of them are kind of angled towards like streamers and people who play Dark Souls to death and want it to just be like too punishing or just really
Hmm.
annoying. And Age of Sunlight felt like an actual mod trying to make it recreate the first playthrough experience.
And stuff like having the Tomb of the Giants lit up and put the bonfire mimics in and just like pushing the boundaries of what the game could be.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I think you'll like Convergence mod. Um, don't shy away from the magic. That's the
Yeah, it
main.
seems the point.
Yeah, that's the main point of that. Although you can definitely do just melee. Do you know what build you want to do?
I assumed I would go Int and Faith and just do all sorts of different magic.
Yeah, that should be good. Int and Faith together. Um, the way the magic system is, it's not just going to lock you into doing any one type of magic. So that should be good.
Yeah, I'll get to try a bunch of stuff out.
Yeah.
Was there a covenant that you had a lot of fun with?
The way the covenants work is they're all pretty much mechanically the same. Um, the one that I think is the most interesting is actually the alchemist covenants, because the whole alchemy system is a neat way to work around not having magic in a mod that's all about using magic, where you basically just craft these consumables that give you some of the effects of having magic but as consumables, and so you're
Hmm.
juggling consumables in a way you never really do in the Dark Souls games.
Okay.
You don't have to pick alchemist to start in order to unlock those eventually, but it it's fun to dip into in different playthroughs and like craft like the giant grenades or craft the potions that let you um, uh, sprint without losing stamina, like basically put you into auto sprint.
Ooh.
Uh, there's also an air magic that lets you do that. I remember the Cinders mod for Dark Souls 3 had a ring that basically forced you into permanent sprint and also permanent max stamina, which was completely broken because they didn't change it. They didn't edit it to not work for like weapons, so you would just constantly be spamming the massive swings. It's really funny.
And does Convergence have auto regen for mana?
It does have automatic FP regen, and a lot of armor sets have automatic HP regen. Although it's pretty small, the FP regen is pretty strong, and you don't. Even if you're just using weapon arts a lot, which there are a lot of really strong weapon arts that they added, you're going to be using a lot more abilities than just R1 spam and rolling,
Hmm.
which definitely differentiates it from regular Dark Souls 3. It can get a little cheesy because there are a lot of situations where you're perfectly free to just stand back and spam something at an enemy and they can't really do anything about it. But I think
Yeah, that's Dark Souls anyway, though.
yeah, I think overall, it's a lot of fun to go back through. I had a lot of fun playing back through it a second time recently with the new changes and checking out some of the new bosses that they added and things like that. They still haven't really touched the DLCs, which I'm kind of disappointed in. The DLCs are always kind of lackluster to me in that in Dark Souls 3. But yeah, what was I don't remember what the question was.
I don't know. We're just rambling.
Oh. But yeah, Convergence mod for Dark Souls 3, if you feel like talking about that later. I don't know, Superliminal is kind of similar. It's a puzzle game. I didn't like it though. That's the one where
That's the perspective changing one?
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically Portal, except instead of portals, you have bad depth perception, and they don't really do anything with it. And instead of GLaDOS, you have a really annoying, chipper, I think British guy droning on and on and on.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's not great. Not great. All right, well, I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it. Thank you for helping me rank this and watching and throwing out your 2 cents.
I'll see y'all around.
All right, later. Well, that's that. I do kind of want to knock out a few more tonight, but I really need to let the dog out, so I might just put this on pause for a second and come right back. Yeah, don't feel like you need to stick around because I'm gonna go through some low impact ones that I don't think anyone's gonna care about. So I'll be right back.